And zoning board, you are live.
So, all right, good morning and welcome to the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting for Friday, December 9th, 2022. We do have a few announcements. We do want to congratulate our council who is been elected to the Circuit Court of the County of Suffolk. So his honor over here, Vincent Messina. And then we do have a new member, Abigail Lamb Fitzsimons over here. And happy holidays all. So we have the minutes of October 14th, 2022. May I have a motion?
Can I just make one point? I just want the minutes to reflect that I asked a question of the building inspector and code enforcement, just how enforcement is overseen and managed in terms of applications and conditions before the ZBA, there were, just to be clear, since the issue seems to, there were no allegations or assertions. It was a question, just asking how enforcement is implemented.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Rose, do we have a motion? I'll make a motion. Second, please.
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we have an adjournment request for Hunting Hospitality LLC, 94 Main Street till January 13th, 2022. We do have 3 determinations today, and they're on file at Village Hall if you'd like to review them. In the application of Maximus LLC, 54 George Close Road, Suffolk County Tax Map Number 301-7-3-7, to raise an existing resident and construct a new single-family residence is approved. May I have a motion?
Make a motion. I'll second that.
Pam? Yes.
Mr. McMullen?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connell?
Yes.
Mr. Rose?
Yes.
Mr. Barris?
Yes.
Okay, the second determination of the day in the application of Stephen and Deborah Shapiro, 16 Turbell Lane, Suffolk County Tax Map Number 301-13-10-9, to construct additions to a pre-existing non-conforming residence is approved. May I have a motion?
Motion. I'll second that.
And please poll the board. Yes.
Mr. McMullen?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connell?
Yes.
Mr. Rose?
Yes.
Mr. Barris?
Yes.
And the last one today, in the application of Edward and Margot Levy, J. Levy, 3321 Georgia Road, Suffolk County Tax Map Number 301-7-5-1.13, to construct additions to an existing residence is approved. May I have a motion?
Make a motion.
Second.
Pam, please poll the board.
Mr. Burns?
Yes.
Mr. McMullen?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connell?
Yes.
Mr. Rose?
Yes.
Mr. Barris?
Yes.
Okay, we have continuing hearings for Hampton's Residence LLC, 16 Nichols Lane.
We'll share it.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Morning, Eric Bregman from Eric Bregman PLLC, 10 Gingerbread Lane, representing the applicant. The key issues here are the gazebo and the patio on the dune, and a fence related to that. The gazebo is very clear from the evidence that you have that there's no adverse impact whatsoever on the dune. I want to go back to the basics and look at the standards for these items. It's been there for 16 years. Dr. Bokinevich from from Stony Brook says that it in no way diminishes the effectiveness of the natural protective feature, that is the dune. There's no deep pilings, there's no excavation. He confirmed the existence and the maintenance of the dune will not have any adverse effects. Of the gazebo will not have any adverse effects on the dune. And the proposed project here, not the proposed project, but the gazebo will not adversely affect the property, nor will destabilize the primary or secondary dune. And that's all supported by the Woods Hole support that was done years ago for the same property. That dune has been there totally stable for many years. And perhaps most importantly, there isn't any contrary evidence that there's any adverse impact on the dune from the gazebo. It's safe from flood and erosion because it's above the FEMA height requirement. So that's no issue. Those are the standards for a coastal erosion structure. With respect to the zoning variances, Mr. Rose, you said last time you can see it and from the beach, and you weren't happy about that, which I understand. But that's, with greatest respect, that's not the issue. The issue is, does this have an adverse impact on the neighborhood or a change in the neighborhood that adversely impacts the neighbors? There hasn't been a single neighbor who's complained about the gazebo. Mr. Halpin has something to do with the patio, and I will talk about that in a minute, but has no problem with the gazebo. Mrs. Ford, the other neighbor on the other side, the east side, has written a letter supporting the application. So there's no impact on the neighbors. And if you look at the page 1 of that packet and photographs, you can see going along the coastline that the gazebo is entirely consistent with the placement of other houses, other gazebos, swimming pools, and various follies that go with these houses. And if you then turn the next page, page 2, I've circled the gazebo or the roof of it on page 2, and you can see it. And this is in the winter. In the summer, most of it, a great deal of it is covered, which is on page 3 because of all the bushes and stuff. I didn't have a summer photo from directly in front of it, but this is the best I had. If you then go down the next page, 4 is going east. That's the Halpern House, which is further out, as you can see from page 1, than the gazebo. Further out, meaning closer to the water. That's the Halpern House. There's much more of that scene. I'm not being critical of it. I'm just saying this is what the neighborhood is. If you keep going, and here is looking at the Hampton residence house, the Icon's house was the white one, and the Halpern's house to the left on page 5. And that little circle is the roof of the gazebo. So you can see it, but it's not overwhelming. And by any means, it's not a problem with the neighbors, and it's totally consistent. Keep going west on page 6. You see, I have little arrows showing you the fence, which is almost exactly like the fences in front of the Icon's house, and the big house, which is as close to the dune line as the proposed gazebo. Same thing on page 7. These photos are going west now. The house and the outbuilding and the fence are typical. Page 8 does not have a fence, but the house is right on top of the dune, as close to the water as the gazebo. Page 9 shows the same sort of fence. You can run through these, I'm sure you have, but it's rather stunning how much what the icons have is like the neighborhood and how consistent it is with the neighborhood. Page 10 is the same kind of fence. Page 11 is a house that's right on top of the dune and closer. Page 12 is another fence that goes all the way along that whole strip. Page 13 is a very big house and fence that's right on top of the dune. Page 14 is sort of the westernmost part of this beach. And again, it has the same kind of fence halfway up the dune. The concern expressed in the planning department's report was that the fence in front of the Icon's house is like halfway up, and that's not typical. And what I'm trying to show you is it is very typical going along this route. Page 15 starts going east from the Icon's house. Again, 15 is a house right on the beach. 16 is a house. It's not as far out as the gazebo, but the fence is similar. Page 17 is, again, the same kind of fence that the icons have that goes all the way across, and the house is farther out. Page 18, there it is, the fence, two fences, one down in the secondary dune at the base of the second dune, and one at the top of that dune. This is I think it's the Smith House on page 19, shows an outbuilding that is closer to the water than the proposed gazebo. And the big house, which is also close to the water, and lo and behold, the same type of fence. Page 20 is just a little bit further east. It's the same house, but it shows that the fence goes all the way, continues all the way east. Page 21, different kind of fence, a post and wire fence, but there it is, halfway up the dune. These are all these fences are there to keep the deer off the front lawns of these properties, and that's what they're doing. Page 22, I believe, is the Griffin House, which has a pre-existing gazebo right on top of the, way out front, and again, the deer fence halfway up the dune. And I think this is the Panzer House on 23. There's the same kind of fence. I'm not sure whose house 24 is, but it's further east from the Panzers, but there is, again, a deer fence halfway up the dune. And 25, continuation showing that fence halfway up the dune continues all east in front of that vacant lot to the east of that house. 26 is a bigger house with, and I didn't realize this until I made this trek, all of these houses have fences, most of them halfway up the dune. The next page, which should have a number on it, but doesn't, it's the one with the yellow line, a survey with a yellow line. That's an old survey, and that yellow line, which I added, that's where the fence was back in when this was done, which is 2008. So specifically, you have to find that there's an undesirable change in the neighborhood or the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties in order to deny this application. I don't think you can. I don't think there's any evidence to show that. There are no complaints. It's been there for 16 years. As I said, Mrs. Ford, the two neighbors have no problem. Mrs. Ford wrote in support of it. Both the fence and the gazebo are totally consistent with the neighborhood. So the bottom line is that gazebo is entirely consistent with the neighborhood, and it's visually not a detriment. And you can't say this is different in type or scale from the others. One of the standards, and I don't think it really applies here, is there a feasible alternative? And there isn't for both of the fence and the gazebo. If you're going to have a gazebo that's going to have an ocean view, it has to be where it is. It can't be on the other side of the house. or some other place. If you're going to have a fence that's acting as a deer fence to keep the deer from coming up the dune, as everybody along the stretch has, you have to have it where it is. And there's a case which I'll give to counsel if he wishes. I'm sure he knows it. It's Baker v. Brownlee, where the second department said, and it's a very similar case, which is why I mention it. The guy wanted a variance for a deck facing the water. In this case, it was a bay. And the zoning board turned him down. They said, you can have your deck on the other side of the house. And the Court of Appeals said, wait a second. He wants a deck with the water view. That's what the application is for. And they reversed the lower court actually and said the variance had to be given because it's the benefit to the applicant and the benefit is a water view deck. It's almost exactly on point here. Now, the next item is the removal of the patio. And the short answer to that is removal and revegetation of where the patio was, and also revegetation of the area that was considered a meadow, perhaps, or turned into lawn. And the short answer is that, yes, we'll do it. And if you look through, again, in the package, the third to the last item, or the last item, sorry, the third to the last item is Billy's proposal for that revegetation. It's the one with the red or reddish orange fill-in area. That's the area. And particularly in that area where just below the black line, that's where the patio was in the past. The patio's gone. It'll be revegetated. It hasn't been revegetated yet because we're waiting for a decision here, but they will do that for the whole area. So this page 28 is Billy's proposal. Page 29 shows that on the survey, it's a blow up of the survey section, so you can see it there. I circled the area where the patio used to be that will be revegetated. And page 30 is the landscaper's plan for the natural vegetation that'll be replaced there. So it's there, and we'll do it. I think that's sort of easy. The one related issue is if you see on the last page where it says bin, B-I-N, that's really not a bin. That is it really looks like a mailbox. It's a metal box on a post, on a pole. And what it is, and what it was used for in the past, is electricity and telephone connections. When Mr. Icahn used to sit in the area where the patio was, where you can't sit, we won't be able to sit anymore. All right. I'm proposing that he ought to be able to keep it so he can sit on the lawn and put a chair on the lawn, which he certainly could, where that arrow is on page 30, and, be able to connect to his electricity and most of the telephones. Now, he could do it with Wi-Fi, and, we wouldn't need those wires necessarily, but they're there. Taking them out would be excavating in the dune, and they're probably more reliable, et cetera. So I suggest to you that there isn't any reason to have him take it out. The only possible reason would be you think he'll sneak and take out the vegetation, but we're talking about a major vegetation here that will keep him out of the former platform area. So this project doesn't increase, there's no environmental impact whatsoever. You have Bokunievich saying that there's no, at great length, Woods Hole saying that there's no impact on the dune, which would be the only possible impact from a structure on the dune. There isn't. There's no increase in density. You're not adding bedrooms or expanding the house. It's not really living area. It's sort of having meals looking over the ocean is what it's used for. That's it. Questions?
Thank you, Mr. Bregman. Board members, do you have any questions? Mr. Rose?
So you said the gazebo's been there for 16 years?
Yes.
And the item that the survey that you submitted, which is
2008.
on page 27, I think, in the packet,
Yep.
which is dated 2008, 14 years ago.
Yep.
Can you identify the gazebo for me, please, on that survey?
Well, they didn't do that, but I did have, and it's not there. You saw the aerials the last time I was here. I can reproduce them. And there were aerial pictures going back to, it was 2000, somewhere between 2006 and 2007. And 2007 shows it clearly there.
So I just want to make sure I understand what your argument is, that this gazebo that was enclosed, the structure built in the protected area without permits or permission, without appearing on the survey before the village, that because the neighbors don't object, and which is clearly visible, very visible, despite the pictures, the limited pictures that you showed, very visible from the beach, that because it was built, it is, and the neighbors on the immediate sides don't object, that therefore it's the burden of proof is on the village to say that it should be removed?
No, it's not just
I just want to understand what the rationale is.
the rationale is the standards you have to apply are, I can read them to you. Whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties will be created by the granting of the area variance.
Keep going, all
Right.
five.
Whether the benefit sought by the applicant can be achieved by some other method is feasible. I talked about that. Whether the requested area variance is substantial. I don't know how you decide where it's substantial since the entire house is there. And whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions. And then whether it was self-created, which we're not arguing.
No, just keep reading the last one too.
Whether it was self-created.
Right.
Which it is.
So
We're not fighting, but that's not determinative.
unnecessarily determinative. I just want to make sure I understood. The testimony was that there was the reason for the necessary maintenance of the gazebo was there was a bee problem in the area that made it impossible or inconvenient for the.
We're not dancing. We're not lawyers dancing on head.
Well, you're making-
They want a gazebo on their lawn to be protected in a place to eat and look at the water, to protect them from the rain, and if there are bees there, protect them from the bees. But it's a gazebo.
So when I went by as part of the site visit inspection prior to the last hearing, the owners were having breakfast outside on their patio in front of their house, happily looking at the water with no bees. They weren't in the gazebo. There was no,
Mr. Rose, your approach seems to be that
I'm just asking a question. If there's, I'm asked, it's not
No,
arguing.
I understand. No, your questions are asking whether, there's some kind of, I don't know a better word than sneakiness going on. They want a gazebo.
Whether there's some kind of what?
Some kind of, they're trying to hide the ball.
No, I don't think
or
there's
make
any trying to hide. I'm
They
just,
want a gazebo.
they want to keep the gazebo that they built without permission.
Right.
I understand.
And they
Okay.
did have bees at one time. They seem to have gone away. They may in fact come back with the revegetation. But one of the reasons that they cut it down was to get rid of the bees. So, but anyway, I'm not standing
I
here
understand.
saying
I just want to make sure I understand the argument.
it's not
Thank
a
you.
bee
I'm not-
problem.
I'm not-
It's a gazebo like there are 3 or 4 other gazebos very similar right along that strip. They wanted to be there. You can't, again, this is, we're dancing on the head of the pin. They can eat their breakfast. I've been there too. on the porch there's right in the part of the house, right? You can't see the ocean from there, or it's difficult to do that. They wanted the gazebo out there. It's been there. They've enjoyed it. It hasn't bothered anybody at all. And that's the point, not that just that the neighbors don't care about it. It is a non-event as far as the community is concerned. And there's certainly no detriment to the community. And the reason I went through all those pictures is to show you it is entirely consistent with the neighborhood. And just to go back again to the standards, there's no issue of any impact on the dune. It is built on the dune without any excavation. There are no deep pilings. And so there's no environmental impact, which would be a concern, but there isn't. And you have one of the people who's been very much involved in studying the dune along this strip, the Lily Pond Lane strip, for decades. You see, if you see Mr. Bokinyevich's qualifications, I did not read them because we did that at one of the earlier hearings.
Do any board members have any other questions on us?
Yeah, it seems that many of the photos in there showed snow fences as opposed, and then you had some with the deer fences. Just because other people have possibly, I don't know this for a fact, installed those deer fences without permission. I don't think that plays on your applicant's ability to keep that deer fence.
Well, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
That's all I had. That was my one comment.
I tried to show that there are only a couple of the fences are the traditional, zigzag snow fences down at the base of the dune. There are certainly, I don't know, 2 or 3 or 4 of those. What I tried to show was that there were parallel to the ocean, not zigzag fences, halfway up or more up the dune, which are there to keep the deer out. The reason it's because they're jumping uphill, so that's why they're placed where they are. And again, it goes to the basic standard that it's consistent. Again, I didn't exclude the pictures with the zigzags because I wanted to show you what was really there.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bregman. Is there anybody in the audience? Go ahead, Mr.
No, but if anyone has,
Is anybody in the audience like to speak on this?
I have just one further question. I just want to make sure is it your argument that property owners abutting the dunes, if they want something like a gazebo, should be able to build it, and then assuming that there's no objection from the immediate neighbors, that the village doesn't have that it should be allowed to stay?
You're asking a very deep question.
I'm trying to understand the argument that you're putting forward for why it's okay.
Yes.
Notwithstanding that it was built without a permit, apply the variance criteria. The majority of the factors.
Yes, that's what I really argue. In a different circumstance, if there was an environmental impact, if somebody wanted to do something or have an environmental impact, that would be one thing. If in fact it was an imposition and caused a detriment to the neighborhood, then it would be. But you're absolutely right. The concept of the law that governs your actions is that variances have to be granted unless one of these things gets in the way. So, and which is not how people normally look at it, but that's the deal.
Can I just ask counsel, how do we vote on this? There's about 5 different issues here.
Yeah, it's a balancing of each of the factors. Different factors. You have to examine them, come to findings with respect to each one of our decisions. And then, for example, if 3 of the 5 go in favor of the application, it would be granted. It would have to be granted. Clearly here, there's only 4 factors at play. The applicant also concedes that it was a self-created hardship. It used to be the law at one time in the state that the self-created hardship was enough to defeat the application in and of itself. That's not the case anymore. The statute has changed, so we would have to undergo analysis of the 4 remaining groups. And the board make a decision.
Okay, thank you. Motion to close the hearing,
So moved.
second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Bregman.
Thank you.
And Vinnie, did I mess up here? Do we have to go back on the determinations?
To close those, the Trump House.
Okay, so do we do the Levy one or the Trom House one?
Trump House,
Levy
we
is
need to
good.
close. Levy is, well, we can close Levy.
Well, we,
Levy, we voted,
okay.
so that's fine.
So Andrew and Alyssa Klein, 177 Main Street. I have a motion to close the hearing. Make a motion. Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And Trom House 1 LLC and Trom House 2 LLC, 75 West End Road and 69 West End Road. Do I have a motion to close the hearing?
But before,
I don't think we're having any more comments,
well,
right?
is there any reason that we shouldn't allow for additional testimony, given that new materials have been submitted?
Requested it.
Is there just, see if there's any requests for additional comment before we close, is my suggestion.
It's nice to see you two getting along this week.
It looks like there's a request for additional comment.
I asked for the time.
After listening to the hearing, I just want to say hello. I have a 1 o'clock train. I don't want to belabor this. I'd ask you to close the hearing. I don't need to do a dog and pony show. However, Jeff, I believe, would like to say something in deference to Jeff. I'll give him my time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ackerman.
And just to be clear,
This is the second act.
We were very specific. We were,
we were
Two-
keeping the record
you know,
open for comments during that period, and then we were to close the hearing. But of course, the board can reconsider that if it wishes, but
Okay.
that's why we, today's vote to close.
I'll be very brief. Jeff
Please.
Bragman for Catherine Rayner.
Start. Matt, can we get is there an echo in here or is it?
Yeah,
just me?
no, it's me. It's really hard.
I was asked by
Can't hear
them to
from the
raise the
audience.
volume
Can't
because
hear.
some people in the crowd couldn't hear.
Okay.
There's not much I can do as far as the echo
Does
goes.
the audience hear the echo as well?
yeah, they do.
Okay, so maybe.
I could
try
lower it a little bit.
A little bit.
If I could just ask everyone to try to speak into the microphone for broadcast purposes.
Into the mic.
Thanks, Matt.
My hearing aid.
Jeff Bragman for Catherine Rayner. I just want to thank the board for permitting the 2 short adjournments that you did. It gave us the time to review the file and the history more carefully and give you comments. It also gave the applicant the opportunity to answer us in a free and frank exchange. And since then, Lenny and I have spoken about some of our concerns going forward, and we're working cooperatively. I've already met with Tom Lawrence on the site and look forward to continued cooperation with him. So I appreciate that. I think it was the right thing to do, and it was very helpful to us in resolving our issues. So thank you very much.
Mr. Bragman. Thank you, Mr. Ackerman.
I make a motion to close the hearing.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. You talked to council here, the
Yeah, certainly. Your matter will be read for decision.
all right, so continued hearing on Gales Beach House, 24 2 Mile Hollow Road. Okay,
I don't see the
I
applicant.
don't see Andy here.
Would you like me to provide a summary of what?
Yeah, I would.
Sure.
Thank you, Billy.
So at the last hearing, it was unclear as to whether or not the sound mitigation measures were installed. So the board left the record open, and after the hearing, it was resolved that the sound mitigation had not been installed yet. So the applicant has submitted, or the applicant's representative has submitted a letter, and they outlined that the air conditioning units and other facilities will be enclosed on 3 sides with a 6-foot sound attenuation fence or double stockade fence with LV1 material sandwiched in between. And it's going to surround on 3 sides facing the neighbor, the air conditioning units and the other apparatus that exists in that area.
Thanks, Billy.
So that's in a letter November 8th.
Anybody in the audience have an objection to this or want to speak? Board members, I have a motion to close the hearing?
I'll make a motion. Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Continued hearing of Eric and Lori Blastine, 211 Lily Pond Lane. Trevor?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
Morning.
This was put over for submission of proposed landscape with regards to the garage. Hopefully the board has had a chance to look at some of the different drawings and elevations showing, we do have the existing hedge, which is there. Currently, it's cut down, consistently, but we can let it grow. And we also propose some additional specific trees to allow for coverage as well, not blocking out the whole side yard. But that was a nicer look for everybody.
Board members?
Just a question. Can you just reiterate, or it wasn't clear to me from why it is that the proposed garage can't be moved further away from the fence to comply with, to mitigate the visual impact from the parking lot?
Sure. So there was a couple of different reasons why the proposed location is where it is. The first being there's an existing structure there that's to be removed. The shed, it's already disturbed property. And it's also sort of the landing zone from where the driveway ends is where the proposed garage is to be installed. And thirdly, the I don't know if you have the survey with the topo, but the lot sort of drops off as you come inward into the lot. So to move it inward off the property line would require fill, which we don't really want to do on this property.
I hear you.
One question. So it didn't turn into what was originally the application, and then the applicant modified it. There's no basement, no heat, no AC, correct? Okay.
Right. So the plans that you have, which is the 1.5 slab garage with
Okay, got it.
storage above, if any, it's an A-frame, so there's not a lot of.
All right, excellent.
Thanks, Trevor. Anybody in the audience have any objection on this or want to speak? Okay, motion to,
I just want to make a comment for the record that I think
please.
I have no problem with a garage being located in this general area. I think it would be desirable to move it a little in a way still consistent with being accessible from the existing driveway, given the size and height of this to move it a few feet further away from the fence, so it has less of a visual impact on the public area, the parking lot.
Trevor?
So we would ask that it be where it's proposed. I think a foot or two would create a lot of problems for as far as, the
Circular,
plans.
is it a circular driveway?
No, it's not particularly. No, it dead ends at the fence right where this goes. So it doesn't loop all the way around. There's no second.
Okay.
Well, there's the egress into Georgia.
Well, there's the Georgia Cup, but that's not, it's
Yeah.
sort of
But you
like
don't
a
use,
J more than a circle.
and
yeah.
the landscaping, could we mitigate some of this with the trees?
Well, there's not a whole lot of room is the problem for the landscaping, given where the small shed that's now in place right up against the fence. There's not to do it in exactly the same location minimizes the mitigation impact of additional plantings. That's why I'm suggesting, just one observation.
Sure.
Moving it slightly further to the east could allow for greater room for plantings that could mitigate the impact of the structure.
And I don't know that, the client would necessarily oppose, a nominal amount, but kind of keeping, if we're talking a few feet, does it really change the impact of the concern,
And those are going to be full-size trees that get
Yes.
planted.
Correct.
So they'll already be above the
That's
foliage
as
will be
proposed,
above
correct,
the-
yeah.
the
So
fence line.
the landscaper is the one who designed what's to be proposed for the full canopy trees, right?
It goes, that's, the question is for substantial trees of that size, is there enough
Room to put the
room
ball
to
in.
put the ball in, given the location and but that's the.
Based
that's
on the
reason.
landscaper who, Jacob Hamilton Gardens, he's the one who,
And Billy, these trees, I mean, do you take a,
Yeah, it's a red maple, which is native, and they're Hollywood, juniper Hollywoods, which are, it's a hardy tree. It's similar to an eastern red cedar, but it's not a cedar tree. It's a horticultural variety, but it does pretty well in a dune environment. They don't really fill out like a cedar or a white pine does. They're a little thinner at the top, so
and they'll grow in this environment?
yeah, they'll do fine here. I mean, I can't attest to their success rate, in an 8-foot wide gap, but in this general area, being close to the beach, and they'll do well in that with that as long as they're irrigated properly.
and I think that a condition that they maintain, that they survive. So if they die, they have to be reinstalled.
Can we condition that?
Absolutely.
Motion to close the hearing?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you. Moving into the new hearings of the day, we have 33 GB LLC, 33 Gingerbread Lane.
Application of 33 GB LLC, certified text, 1254, the variances from chapter 278 zoning to construct a square foot detached garage and AC condensing unit. A 7-foot variance is requested from section 278-385A to construct a garage 48 feet from the front yard lot line where the required setback is 55 feet. Variances of 1.5 feet and 10.1 feet are requested from section 278-385B to construct a garage and cellar entrance / Bilko door 18.5 feet and 9.9 feet from the side yard lot line with required side yard setback to 20 feet. A 6.1 foot variance is requested from section 278-385B to construct an AC condenser unit 13.9 feet from a side yard lot line where the required setback is 20 feet. The subject property is 43,468 square feet in area and is located at 33 Gingerbread Lane in the Residence District R40. This project is classified as a type 2 action in accordance with SEQA.
Morning, Mr. Huber.
Good morning. John Huber, Dayton, Voorhees, and Balsam of East Hampton for the applicant 33GB LLC. I'm accompanied by project architect Ernest Schieferstein to my right. As summarized on page 2 of our application, applicant proposes a new 22 by 29 foot detached garage with cellar for storage and mechanical space. The cellar will be accessed via a 6-foot by 10-foot Bilko door at grade on the garage's west side. As indicated by the October 18th, 2022 Saskia survey submitted in support of the application, the subject parcel is a secluded flag lot located on the south side of Gingerbread Lane. The village's manufacturing zoning district and the Long Island Railroad tracks lie to the north beyond Gingerbread Lane. The Village Townhomes community abuts to the west. The proposed garage will be set back approximately 355 feet south of Gingerbread Lane. Our 7-page photograph exhibit packet depicts relevant property conditions. Each of the board members should have a copy of it. I'll just quickly go through that. I apologize. The pages themselves are not numbered, but the photos are labeled. So I'll just jog through those quickly. The photographic exhibits confirm that the parcel's interior is well concealed by dense vegetation which lines the property's perimeter. Photos 1 and 2 depict the view of the subject site from Gingerbread Lane looking southwest. Photo 3 depicts the view from the property's parking area adjacent to the proposed garage's location, looking northeast toward Gingerbread Lane and the manufacturing district beyond. Photograph 4 depicts another view of the parking area. Photograph 5 depicts the view from the parking area looking southwest along the slate pathway. into the backyard toward the swimming pool. Please note that as depicted on the survey, the proposed garage will be positioned 15 feet west of the house and will be in the area currently occupied by the raised planting bed depicted near photo 5's lower right corner. Photo 6 depicts the house's rear or south facade with the proposed garage location near the photo's upper left corner. And photo 7 depicts the house's rear or south facade with the proposed garage location near the photos about on the center of the page. Applicant requests 4 minor area variances as follows. Variance 1, the proposed garage's north facade will be set back 48 feet from the property's northern boundary, whereas 55 feet are required. We request a 7-foot front yard variance. Variance 2, a 7.5 square foot triangular portion of the garage's northwest corner will be set back 18.5 feet from the western property boundary, whereas 20 feet are required. We request a 1.5 foot side yard variance for that portion of the garage. Variance 3, the proposed AC condensing unit at grade on the garage's west side will be set back 13.9 feet from the western property boundary, whereas 20 feet are required. We request a 6-foot, 1.2-inch side yard variance for the AC unit. And variance 4, the proposed Bilco door at grade on the garage's west side will be set back 9 feet, 10.8 inches from the western boundary, whereas 20 feet are required. We request a 10-foot, 1.2-inch side yard variance. For the record, the relevant area variance criteria are set forth at New York Village Law Section 7-712-B, paragraph 3, and Village Code Section 278-7, paragraph C2. I've summarized on page 3 of the application form how applicant's proposal satisfies the variance criteria. For purposes of today's hearing, I'll summarize those criteria. The overarching concept, whether the benefit to the applicant if the variances are granted will outweigh the detriment, if any, to the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood or community. The benefit that the applicant seeks is to have an aesthetically pleasing, appropriately scaled, and located detached garage. The proposed garage will optimize applicants' use and enjoyment of the property without any detriment to the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood or the community. The Saskis survey, the Schieferstein architectural materials, and the 7-page photographic exhibit we've submitted demonstrate that the proposed garage will be ideally situated to serve its purpose. It will integrate seamlessly with the other structures on the property while requiring only minor variances from the village's code provisions. The nearest residence, the townhome at 47 Gingerbread Lane in the townhome community, is over 100 feet to the west. The space between is occupied by a stockade fence, a dense buffer of trees, and the eastern driveway for the village townhome community. Criterion 1, whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or whether a detriment to nearby properties will be created if the variances are granted. The garage's proposed location, scale, and architectural vernacular are in keeping with existing conditions on and in proximity to the subject property. The garage will not undesirably or detrimentally affect neighborhood character or nearby properties. Criterion 2, whether the benefit sought by the applicant can be achieved by an alternative feasible method aside from the requested variances. Based on the subject parcel's flag lot configuration and the existing site improvements, the benefit sought by the applicant cannot be achieved by an alternative feasible method. The flagpole strip or panhandle section of the lot is 7,675 square feet, nearly 2/10 of an acre, and consumes 18% of lot area. This constitutes a substantial reduction in area that could be used otherwise for practical purposes, such as the proposed garage or other improvements. Moreover, applicant's reasons for situating the garage are proposed are as follows. If I may, I'd like to direct the board's attention to photo 5 in the packet. To avoid creating an unnecessarily narrow alley between the dwelling and the garage, to create ample space for the steps that will access the garage's east side entry just off of the dwelling, and to allow ample space for a walkway. The intention at this point, as I understand it, is to maintain this very modest slate pathway back into the yard. Moving on to photo 6, to minimize the garage's visibility from the existing porch at the house's rear. So the intention was to get it up as close as possible to the parking area without exceeding the front line of the house. And to minimize the garage's obstruction of pleasant breezes that cool the porch. The breezes blow in that move from west to east and vice versa across the backyard. If the garage was further back toward the pool, it could obstruct the breezes. And the desire was also to optimize the space from the edge of the pool to the back of the garage. As indicated on the survey and the site plan, the garage's west side would be the least obtrusive location for the AC unit and the Bilco door.
Why couldn't you put the AC unit back by the shower and take one of these variances away?
Well, the southern facade of the garage, if I'm not mistaken, the applicant's desire was to keep that as aesthetically benign as possible. There's an outdoor shower that would be located there. And so to minimize the clutter, visual clutter there, and to keep it as aesthetically satisfying as possible, locating sort of the utilitarian type structures, the AC unit and the Bilco door on the west side would mitigate the visual impact from the property's interior.
Why do you need an AC unit?
That's kind of where I was going at.
It's a great question.
It's a garage.
Yes, that's correct. It's primarily for storage. And so we have in the garage, the AC unit would be climate control. And if Ms. Kornreich, the owner of the property, chooses to work in the garage during the summertime, she would like it to be climate controlled, so it was a comfortable temperature. And they're also, the intention is to store, and I will address this later on, so forgive me if I repeat myself. They intend to store a vintage automobile. I believe it's a Jaguar, 1950s perhaps, and they're going to keep it on wheel dollies and roll it over into the area of the garage that doesn't have a door. There's only one garage door, and that would be used. She has an electric vehicle. The proposed solar panels, she drives about 500 or 600 miles a year, and that solar system that's designed generates about 10,000 kilowatt hours a year of storage, which would be, the batteries would be in the basement, in the cellar, forgive me. And she will be able to run that vehicle just by charging it from the solar panels on the roof. The intention was also to have the mechanicals in the cellar. Anything else, Mr. O'Connell?
Nope.
Okay. Whether, yes, sir.
Regarding the side yard setback, we're talking 18 inches and you have 15 feet between the house and the garage. Again, as Mr. McGurk said, just moving it the 18 inches could eliminate another variance that's required and move it away from the neighbor's property as well. And that is all because of that slate walkway?
No, not only. Thank you, sir, for your question. So we wanted to optimize, to avoid creating an alley effect, which would not be if unnecessarily close to the house. So set aside the fact that we're requesting the variance just for purposes of responding to your question. The aesthetic desire is to optimize the space between the dwelling and the garage. And there's an access from the house so that she can basically come out of the house and scooch right into the garage. And there's a very modest little few steps there. So to sort of give enough room without creating a tripping hazard, et cetera, in that area and make it clustered. So basically that 7.5 square feet at the corner of the garage is the issue. If we remove the house the proposed garage over towards the house, it would eliminate that small area, that 7.5 square feet. As I'll explain shortly under criterion 3, it is a very minor variance. In other words, it's not substantial. Do you object if I proceed? And I'll get into the guts of that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, so whether the requested variance is a substantial, and just also, when I conclude my sort of presentation, Mr. Schieferstein would be happy to come up and explain, obviously as the attorney, my competence to address the aesthetic, the architectural vernacular is limited. Mr. Schieferstein is suitable to answer those questions. The 4 requested variances are neither individually nor collectively substantial, especially when we consider that this is a low impact proposal for an accessory building. Of the 4 variances requested, the build code door variance of 10.1 feet is the most quantitatively significant, although this structure would be installed at grade and will not have any impact on the neighborhood or nearby properties. Criterion 4, whether the requested variances will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood. This is a type 2 action under relevant sections of the state environmental quality review regulations. And the proposed work is deemed not to have a significant environmental impact. Whether the alleged criterion 5, whether the alleged difficulty has been self-created. I know that the board much prefers when applicants appear and ask permission to do things of this nature, rather than do work and then come and ask for subsequent approval. And this is very much the case here. Mr. Schieferstein and I have worked very diligently with Ms. Kornreich to come up with a design that required sort of the least amount of variance relief. And so indeed, the difficulty is not self-created. The circumstances underlying the application, so this is the flag lot with a relatively expansive panhandle, and an alternative feasible location for the garage at the site is not available. And the property does not currently benefit from the presence of a garage for vehicular parking or storage. The construction of such a building will be most beneficial to the applicant's use and enjoyment of the property. And finally, the requested variances are the minimum necessary to afford applicant the benefit it seeks while preserving and protecting neighborhood character and the community's health, safety, and welfare. It probably would make sense for me to just add a few final comments. The village code does not prohibit cellars in garages. And the seller helps to drastically reduce the garage's footprint while not compromising the applicant's storage space. There will be mechanical space in the cellar for batteries to store solar power, a water heater. There's a sink in the garage, a slop sink, also a dehumidifier. So that would conclude my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have or to have Mr. Schieferstein step up.
Board members? Any questions? Is there anybody in the audience that has any questions? Thank you, Mr. Huber. Any motion to close the hearing? Make a motion. Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pam, please.
Sure. Application of the Rosary LLC, supplementing tax map number 301851 for area variances from chapter 278 zoning to construct additions to a existing non-conforming residence. Section 278 3A4A to construct additions 15.5 feet from the rear yard lot line to the required setback is 21.53 feet. The 273 square foot variance is requested under section 278 VA 9A to permit 4,869 square feet, where the maximum permitted coverage is 4,596 square feet. The legally pre-existing coverage is 5,010 square feet. The subject property is 20,481 square feet in area and is located at 146 Main Street in the Northeast District R80 and the Main Street Historic District. This project is classified as a type of asset. Requires review by design review.
Thank you, Pam. Mr. Huber,
Yes, sir.
thank you. Take your time. Yeah, Pam, did this go in front of the DRB yet?
No, not yet.
It will go after. Okay, thank you.
Before everybody has it.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, good afternoon, John Huber, attorney for the applicant. The Rosary LLC, just let me clarify, the family that owns that occupies the property is, their last name is the Roses, R-O-S-E. No relation, I imagine, to Mr. Rose on the board. So they named
That's correct,
Yeah, yeah.
as far as I know. No one's.
There was that one of them.
So they named the entity that owns the property, the Rosary. I'm accompanied today by project architect Pamela Pospisil of Pospisil and Brown, Southampton. Please allow the record to reflect that on September 1st, 2022, along with the other application materials, we submitted a letter of support from Philip Weber, owner of the property at 7 Dunmere Lane, which is located 1 block south of the subject premises. As summarized at paragraph 11 on page 2 of our application, applicant proposes first and second floor interior alterations and additions to non-historic portions of the existing main house as depicted on the July 11, 2022 survey site plan prepared by Saskia Surveying and on Ms. Pospisil's elevations and plans to my right, which are displayed here on the easels. The subject parcel is situated on the northeast corner of Main Street and Pondview Lane. Insofar as this is a corner lot, it has 2 front yards and 2 rear yards. Our 20-page photograph exhibit depicts existing property conditions. If the board would just bear with me one moment. Photo 4, forgive me, the pages on there are not numbered, but I have labeled the photos and I can explain for you what each of those photos depicts. Excuse me for one moment. I just need to go in my bag. I'll do as best as I can without holding them up. So page 4 labeled west side of the main house through page 9 labeled main house north side depict portions of the house that are the subject of the application. For purposes of today's hearing, the lot is pre-existing non-conforming with respect to its northern rear yard setback and lot coverage. As for variance 1 regarding the rear yard, 96 square feet of the proposed second floor space to be added over the current pre-existing non-conforming first floor footprint would be set back 13.5 feet from the property's northern boundary, whereas 21.53 feet are required. We request an 8.03 foot rear yard variance. As for variance 2 regarding lot coverage, maximum permissible lot coverage is, and I'll ask the board's patience as I jog you through the lot coverage calculations because there's a pre-existing non-conforming lot coverage. So under the village's code, 4,596 square feet is permitted, whereas the property's pre-existing non-conforming lot coverage is currently 5,010 square feet. We're proposing to reduce pre-existing non-conforming lot coverage by 141 square feet down to 4,869, but we still require a 273 square foot lot coverage variance for that difference from what's permitted to what we're proposing. For the record, the relevant area variance criteria are set forth at New York Village Law, Section 7-712-B, Paragraph 3, and Village Code, Section 278-7, Paragraph C2. For the record, addenda sheets 3A through 3D, which accompany the application, summarize how applicant's proposal satisfies these criteria. Our analysis of these area variance criteria are as follows. The overarching concept, whether the benefit to the applicant, if the variances are granted, will outweigh the detriment, if any, to the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood or community. The benefit applicant requires is an updated family-friendly floor plan and slightly enlarged building footprint that will promote optimized use and enjoyment of the house and adjacent outdoor spaces. The proposed improvements are also required to make the house habitable, consistent with contemporary living standards. These proposed improvements will greatly enhance the house's architectural aesthetic and will not result in any detriment to health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood or the community. Our application documents, including the survey and architectural materials, demonstrate that the proposed improvements will be ideally situated while requiring only minor variances from the village code. Criterion 1, whether an undesirable change would be produced in the character of the neighborhood or whether a detriment to nearby properties will be created if the variances are granted. The answer to this question is no. With respect to the rear yard variance, the 96 square feet of proposed second floor space for which the rear yard variance is requested will be added to the house's north side over the existing first floor footprint. The nearest residence, the DeBoer Vasilis home at 144 Main Street, is visible at page 5 of our photo exhibit packet and is of a scale similar, if not identical, to what we proposed for the subject property. In a sense, applicants' proposed alterations will achieve parity between the two properties. While we're reviewing this photo, I'd like to point out the second-story deck on the rear or east side of Mr. DeBoer's house. I'll discuss that second-story deck in more detail shortly. It's also worth noting that the existing entry and substantial patio area on the house's north side will be eliminated, and you could refer to detail 4 on both the existing and proposed elevations, respectively sheets EC2 and A-3, and also refer to the floor plan, proposed floor plan sheet A-2. This will be a benefit to the abutting parcel at 144 Main Street insofar as this would result in less activity and ambient sound on the north side of applicant's house. Since I'm discussing the abutting parcel at 144 Main Street, I'd like to acknowledge the materials submitted in objection by that property's owner, Mr. DeBoer. Those materials submitted to the village on December 5th, 2022 include a hand-filled page 3 of 7 from the village's variance application form, a transmittal letter dated December 1st, and a series of site photos, some of which are marked up in Sharpie, with Mr. DeBoer's renderings depicting applicant's proposed improvements. Applicant's threshold response is that Mr. DeBoer's bold Sharpie renderings exaggerate the visual effect of the proposed alterations. Perhaps the board will take this into consideration during your deliberations, and will refer back to architect Pospisil's proposed elevations on sheet 8-3 of the plans for proper line and scale. Yeah, they had, yes, sir.
According to this letter, they have not. Yeah.
So, you know, it may behoove you to revisit that, even if it hasn't, right? Since you're gonna have another hearing at the DRB. And I'm sure he's gonna come out there as well, but.
And my recommendation to the board is going to be, we're going to keep this hearing open anyway until you reach out to him.
Okay, so if I may, there was communications with Mr. DeBoer, and we had provided a set of plans, and his comment at the time was that he would not do anything to disrupt the application. So we've proceeded since that point. Perhaps he had a change of heart. Certainly, this is the democratic process at work, and we welcome all comments and responses. But I'm prepared to, as you might expect, to sort of dig into Mr. DeBoer's comments and see if we can't make heads or tails out of the situation. In summary, Mr. DeBoer's objection materials suggest that applicant should locate its additions on the south side of the house at 146 Main Street, essentially in the area occupied by applicant's existing driveway, to prevent partial obstruction of Mr. DeBoer's views to the south toward Pondview Lane and Guildhall. Mr. DeBoer also speculates without substantiation that applicant's proposal will prevent afternoon sunlight from reaching his house during various times of the year. He also opines that applicant's proposed improvements will bring the respective houses visually closer, thereby creating an alley effect. And again, without substantiation, that applicant's proposed improvements will have an adverse impact on his property value. At this point, it's worth noting that the village code does not contain any pyramid regulations that would restrict applicant's proposed design, and that applicant's proposed gabled roof lines run away from Mr. DeBoer's property. At this point, I'd like to specifically respond to some of the points Mr. DeBoer makes in his December 1st letter. First, he incorrectly opines that his and applicant's homes are the closest buildings on Main Street, aside from the Maidstone Hotel. With all due respect, the board will take notice that the East Hampton Star Building at 153 Main Street and the Clinton Academy Building at 151 Main Street, located almost directly across Main Street from applicant's property, are similarly situated with an approximate distance of 25 feet separating them.
But they're not one-family homes. Commercial properties.
Another clarification worth making is that although the Rose family first obtained 146 Main Street in 1990, the current generation took ownership under the Rosary LLC on July 10, 2020. The second page of Mr. DeBoer's letter also references the 2010 renovation of his home. As Mr. DeBoer points out, his renovations did not require any variances. They did, however, require design review board approval, which was granted. These renovations included the second-story deck I mentioned earlier. And I'd like to hand up to the board copies of the 2010 DRB approval regarding the extension on the east side or the rear of Mr. DeBoer's property.
How is that relevant to this?
I will dig right into that shortly, Counselor.
Sure.
So the first, just to let the record reflect, I handed up a packet of documents to stapled, and these pages are numbered. There's a total of 4 sheets. The first sheet is the cover page from the Village's Design Review Board stamping that this application was approved. And I highlighted in yellow certain parts of that approval. About the middle of the sheet, it refers to the construction of a new second floor open deck. So just to respond to council's question, the relevance is that although Mr. DeBoer's application did not require variances, the sheets I'm handing up show you the progression of improvements and enlargement that Mr. DeBoer has on the back of his house. And I would like to explain the impact of that on my client's property.
Chance to explain the impact of that during his hearing. This is about your clients.
Well, if I may, please, this is going to be probably maybe my only opportunity to address this letter, which is part of the record. So I need a full and fair opportunity to address it.
You have a full and fair opportunity. When you're addressing, you can address anything in the letter. What you can address is his application
So do you-
12 years ago with the DRB.
No, he included that in his letter. He referenced it in his letter to.
You can object to it.
Oh, I'm not objecting to it.
You are. You're trying to.
No. This is not now for then an objection.
Your client's application and the impact your client's proposed construction is going to have on surrounding properties, not what surrounding properties have already done.
And may I respectfully request just leeway of maybe 1 minute, and I won't dwell on it any longer than that, I promise.
Go ahead, but
Thank you,
Please keep
sir.
it brief.
So page 2 of that packet I handed to you is what the east side or rear of Mr. DeBoer's home appeared circa 1979 to 1980. The portion in yellow is the second story on the east side. Page 3 shows what Mr. DeBoer's house looked like as of 2009 when he made his application. The yellow portions are the second story. And then the third page, or the page marked 4, shows the second story deck that was approved as of 2009. Okay, one can only imagine the extent to which the occupants of this deck can and perhaps do peer into the yard at 146 Main Street. Certainly, Mr. DeBoer's marked up photos submitted substantiate this observation, no pun intended. One can only imagine that the Rose family's diminished privacy because of this situation. Certainly, one could argue that applicants' proposed alterations will be no more obtrusive, if not much less so. I'll revisit Mr. DeBoer's concerns as addressed in his letter in turn at various points in my presentation. Moving on to our respected lot coverage variance, it is necessitated by the proposed kitchen expansion and adjacent covered porch with steps at the house's southeast corner. So if I point to the existing on this easel, it's a little bit obstructed, but on the lower right corner. All of the foregoing improvements will be modest in scale and scope and will be architecturally consistent with existing conditions at the premises and prevailing development in the vicinity. Criterion 2, whether the benefits sought by applicant can be achieved by alternative feasible methods aside from the requested variances. The answer is no. The proposed improvements embody the most practical and cumulatively effective design. With respect to the rear yard variance, as depicted on the existing and proposed floor plans, the relevant authorizations and additions are as follows. So on the first floor, they want to enlarge, reconfigure, and relocate the central staircase to the north side of the house. So this is the existing location of the staircase. And just let the record reflect, I'm pointing to sheet EC1, which is the architectural plans, and these are existing conditions. It's detail 2. So here is the existing location of the staircase. On the proposed floor plan, you could see that the staircase is moved slightly, maybe 6 to 8 feet to the north, and will be located over the existing footprint of the home. This improvement will optimize the flow between first floor rooms and improve access between first and second floors. It's important to note that the existing staircase is both narrow and steep, and the proposed alterations will provide a much safer, user-friendly alternative. On the second floor, this will also facilitate additional space within which the relocated staircase can be located, and adjacent hall bathroom will be located. In turn, these alterations will optimize flow and privacy amongst the second floor rooms, will allow enlargement, reconfiguration, and relocation of the second floor bedroom at the house's southeast corner, and will facilitate construction of much-needed second-story home office space. I'd like to revisit Mr. Bower's suggestion that the applicant's alterations be located on the south side of the house. At a minimum, this would have the following infeasible consequences. It would require that the staircase be relocated to the house's south side, where the existing kitchen is located, and would likely require an expansion of the house's footprint in this area, which is something that should be avoided, especially because such an extension would increase lot coverage and would be conspicuously visible from Main Street. Such an extension would also encroach into the existing driveway area on the house's south side. This would interfere with existing parking and traffic flow on the property. Although applicant could propose relocating the driveway so that its curb cut was on Pondview Lane, this would substantially alter existing conditions on the property and would exacerbate traffic conditions on Pondview Lane associated with Guildhall and residences further to the south. With respect to lot coverage, the relevant alterations and additions are as follows. On the first floor, the applicant proposes to enlarge, reconfigure, and relocate the kitchen, last updated 34 years ago, to drastically improve use and enjoyment associated with meal preparation and entertaining, and to optimize access to the proposed unenclosed porch adjacent to the kitchen on the house's east side. This in turn will allow for the second floor improvements specified a moment ago. Whether the requested variances are substantial. The requested variances are not substantial. With respect to the rear yard variance, the requested 8.03 foot rear yard variance is neither quantitatively nor qualitatively substantial when considered within the context of the following circumstances. The proposed second floor addition is to be placed directly over the house's existing first floor footprint, which will not need to be enlarged or expanded to accommodate this improvement. Please note also that the footprint of the existing first floor family room situated at the house's northeast corner is between 10.6 feet and 13.7 feet from the property's northern boundary. In other words, the existing family room, the footprint of which will not be altered, is and will remain closer to the northern boundary than the proposed second story addition. As indicated on architect Pospisil's color enhanced proposed second floor plan. That's on. So there's a red dashed line that runs diagonally through the upper. That's the proposed second floor plan at the top. And that dotted line is the required setback from the northern boundary, 21.53 feet. As indicated on architect Pospisil's color enhanced proposed second floor plan and based on the house's northwest southeast diagonal orientation relative to the property's northern boundary, only 96 square feet of the 119 square foot addition requires a rear yard variance. This also speaks directly to Mr. DeBoer's objection insofar as almost all of applicant's proposed alterations on the north and east sides of the house will be within the property's as-of-right building envelope. With respect to lot coverage, the requested 273 square foot lot coverage variance is not substantial when considered within the context of the following circumstances. Proposed lot coverage of 4,869 feet, less permitted coverage of 4,596 square feet results in the 273 square foot difference. This is the amount of the variance we seek. As indicated on the Saska survey, pre-existing non-conforming lot coverage is 5,010. To render the property more conforming with respect to lot coverage, applicant will remove 227 square feet, a portion of the existing brick patio adjacent to the house's north and east sides. So if I may, this is the orange area that's depicted on the lower half of that page. That's all to be removed to render the property more compliant with respect to lot coverage. The combined result to further mitigate applicant's need for a lot coverage variance, as indicated on architect Pospisil's plans, applicant will construct 211 square feet of the proposed alterations at the house's southeast corner over an existing patio in that area. The combined result of these alterations would yield a net 141 square foot lot coverage reduction from existing conditions. Whether the requested variances will have an adverse effect or impact on environmental conditions. Again, this is a type 2 action under SECRA, and it's exempt from further environmental review. Criterion 5, whether the alleged difficulty has been self-created. Applicant's difficulty in complying with the applicable dimensional requirements has not been self-created. The variance requests are necessitated by the house's pre-existing non-conforming proximity to the property's northern boundary and other pre-existing non-conforming conditions.
Knowing it was non-conforming, right?
I'm sorry.
They bought the house knowing it was non-conforming?
It was deeded to them in a state.
So it was deeded to them and they knew it was not conforming, right?
I can't speak for them. They took it as it was at the time that it was given to them. It was an
It
estate.
was non-conforming then. So the had knowledge or should have had knowledge of the difficulty is something.
Okay, so at any rate, we know that that's not determinative. And in balancing, and again, Counselor, I don't mean to be argumentative with you. Forgive me.
Nothing argumentative at all. We disagree.
Oh, no, we don't disagree. I actually, everything you said is true. Requested variance of the minimum necessary to afford applicant the benefit it requires while preserving and protecting neighborhood character and the community's health, safety, and welfare. I have no further comments.
Thank you, Mr. Huber.
I have some comments.
Philip?
So I disagree. I do think it's substantial, even though it's over the existing footprint. You're expanding on that, both the side yard and the coverage. You take it against where the, what's allowed. There's already a lot happening on this property with, I think there's a 1 or 2 bedroom cottage up front. You have another building. So any intensification is substantial. And did you state that the plans would not take away from the light of the neighbor? Is that what you said at some point during that it would not impact the neighbor?
May I respond to?
Well, I was just saying, if that's what you're saying, I would suggest that yourself, the architect, sit down with the neighbor, walk them through it, Because right now you're tied up on that neighbor and you have a major objection from your neighbor. So you have self-created, substantial, it's in the historic district. After us, you got to go to DRB. I would suggest you work it out with your neighbor a bit.
Ms. Pospisil actually could address the sunlight. So just to clarify because it's important, you did hit on a point. My statement was that Mr. DeBoer's concern about the sunlight is really unsubstantiated. He didn't submit any kind of architectural analysis. So Ms. Pospisil has a photograph depicting existing conditions, and she can explain a little bit about that.
Well, clearly he's under the impression he might not possess the same skill and expertise that Ms. Pospisil does, but as a neighbor, you should run him through it.
As I explained, and again, thank you for your comments. I appreciate them. We did have a dialogue with him. Louisa Rose, who is the primary occupant of the home, provided him a set of plans. And well in advance of today's hearing. And Mr. DeBoer, although he said, gee, I wish it wasn't as extensive as it is, he said, I will not do anything to disrupt this. So again, they were diligent in attempting to communicate with him.
You always have a change of heart, right?
So I think we'd like to see you guys get together, not just send them the plans and go through it with them.
Of
I
course.
think as a board. Go ahead, Mr. Rose.
Question.
Yes, sir.
The date that the property was built, I mean, I know it's in the historic district,
Yes,
correct?
sir. Mhm.
And it will require a certificate of appropriateness from DRB. What's the date of the structures? Do you have?
I do. I have examined the inventory, the historic building inventory that's in the DRB's catalog. So the Clinton Academy is right across the street. So this house, the historic portion of the house that's up against East Main Street there, dates sometime in the 1700s. And according to the records I reviewed, there's local legend that possibly students who attended the Clinton Academy either used to room or at least ate in the historic portion of the house. Now the property as a whole was in the Mulford family until 1951. Mrs. Parker, the former owner, deeded it over to the Rose family as part of her estate. The non-historic additions that we're talking about, because the Mulfords came into ownership of it, I think from 1850, and the records show they owned it until 1951. So the non-historic portions were added on to the east side of the house during that time frame. I have carefully examined all the records. I can't date them exactly, but it was in that 100-year period from like 1850 to 1950. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you. Just relevant, Mr. Chair, I just suggest that we refer this for comment to the Village Preservation Committee pursuant to our practice, just so we have some feedback in terms of the input.
Mr. Rose, if I may, it's important that when we refer these, we should have a frame question. So what would be the frame question?
Frame question would be whether the proposals that are for the variances being sought materially impact the historic qualities.
sure I get
Right,
straight.
I understand, right. It's not a general impressionist, the extent to which.
Like I said, I just want to make sure I get it straight so that they give you your.
Right.
And just so the record's clear, simultaneously, when I submitted this application, I submitted a full set of application materials to the design review board.
Understood. Just it's our mandates are somewhat different, so I just want, and it's as stipulated, we have the for historic matters. That's our
Trying to be
procedure.
consistent.
And the point in making is that the design review board will not be uninformed. It won't be in the abstract. They
I
actually
understand.
have full sets of the application materials. My understanding was that the zoning board review is a prerequisite, and then we would transition to formal DRB review.
Understood.
Thank you.
Can I just see if there's anybody in the audience like to comment on this? Okay, Mr. Huber, I think we'd like to keep this.
Sorry.
Can you please come to the dais?
Hello, I'm John Pacucci. I'm here. I'm sorry. I'm an attorney, a judge. I'm a friend of the DeBoers. They've been residents, primary residents of that house for 40 years. Mrs. DeBoer and now Carl DeBoer. And I really don't know. I visited there a number of times. I know the house. I know the side porch. I know they want to extend the house next door. But I mean, I don't know if it's a matter of importance, but Carl couldn't be here because he has a primary medical treatment being conducted right today. And he asked me to come. And I only heard about this yesterday, but I know about the circumstances, but I don't know all the details. So I'm really blind to a lot of the details, but I do know that that structure is right next door to their driveway and their house. And it's I think additionally, it's probably about 20 or 25 feet. It's like living in New York City with a common driveway and then somebody's building a 3-story building right next door. And that's what the effect is on the side of the house, where the kitchen is, where the living room is and everything else. It would block out the light. Now, I don't know in the law if that's a substantial reason, but it's a primary reason for his livelihood and living in that house. And he's suggesting that they would just shift it over a little bit more. The structure that they want to build, would be fine. They have a lot more land on the other side, I think, of this. If you know I'm sure everybody knows the properties. It's very visual from the street. And I also would request that you adjourn this so Mr. DeBoer himself could come and speak on the matter. I know he submitted the letter. He told me he submitted the letter. I did not see it. So that's all I have to say. And that's all I can say. I just request that I ask for an adjournment on this matter so he could personally come and tell you more what his feelings are. And I think it is a main concern when your sunlight is obstructed. I think it's a very main concern.
Let me clarify for you that the case law holds that light, air, and ventilation are all factors that.
Right.
Consider. So the board will consider.
And we are going to keep the hearing open.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Anybody else like to be heard? So we'll keep this open.
Mr. Chairman, may I have Architect Pospisil step up? She will address sort of the daylight and the configuration and some of the design alternatives that she wrestled with in coming up with the proposed design. We'll be brief, maybe 5 minutes. Thank you, sir. If just let the record reflect, I'm submitting a photograph of the subject parcels with the homes improvements that Ms. Pospisil has prepared.
Thank you.
Pamela Pospisil, 141 Hampton Road, Southampton, New York. The photograph that you're receiving, I just I took this and wanted to point out this photo is taken in the fall. Clearly, there's leaves all over the ground. Late afternoon, you can tell by the shadow. I can't tell you the exact time, but the addition that we're proposing out the rear of our house is no taller than the existing home that you see here. And I would say that from this photograph, it's clear that Mr. DeBoer's house is still in full sunlight, and that because our addition is no taller, it is not going to cast a shadow and obliterate the sunlight coming into his house. I would also like to just say that in preparing the design for this, I know that this is not your purview, but the most important thing to me was not to alter the historic portion of the house. And when in fact, we're not touching that at all. And also to have the impact from Main Street be minimal in terms of the visual impact that the addition would have. We are adding out over an area that's already built and that has flat roofs. Never a good situation. So we're adding a gabled roof basically to the building that's there now. And again, I'm not scientifically, I can't tell you what time this is or what the angle of the sun is and all of that, but I would say that this photograph does show that the De Boer house is not in shadow as it appears now, and our addition will be no taller than, or our roof line will be no taller than the existing building.
Thank you. Okay, so we keep the hearing open till January 13th. Okay, thank you. And you won't be here. All right, so we're going to move on to our next hearing of the day, Buck Properties LLC. Pam?
Application of Buck Properties LLC, Suffolk County Tax Map Number 301943 for area variance. Accessory improvements, including a cutting green, fencing, patios, and a water feature. A 2-foot variance is required for section 278-3810 to legalize the installation of an 8-foot deer fencing when the maximum height of fencing is 6 feet. Variances of 17 feet, 13.4 feet, 7.6 feet, 18.8 feet are required from section 278 to legalize a slate patio located 3 feet from the side yard lot line, a fireplace with slate patio located 6.6 feet from the rear yard lot line, a water feature located 12.4 feet from the rear yard lot line, and a slate patio 1.2 feet from the side yard lot line and 6 feet from a rear yard lot line. Required setbacks are 20 feet. A 3-foot variance is required from section 278-3A 5D to legalize a walkway that bisects a side yard lot line where the required setback is 3 feet. Variances of 29.6 feet and 23.9 feet are required from section 278-3A 5C to legalize a play court / putting green located 10.4 feet from a side yard lot line and 16.1 feet from a rear yard lot line where the required setbacks are 40 feet. The subject property is 52,831 square feet in area and is located at 29 Juniper Lane in Residence District R40. This project is classified as a type 2 action in accordance with secret.
Jonathan?
Hi. Trevor just threatened me that if it wasn't quick, he was going to kill me. Just want
No comment.
I'll just break it down to this. There's 3 requested variants. Well, the three issues we have. Let me back up. Sorry. So John Tarbert for the applicant. This property is a little bit unique in that we boarded the Maidstone tennis courts and the facility where they keep all the equipment from mowing the lawns of the Maidstone golf course. Good relationship with them. We have a good relationship with them, and they're good neighbors. But it is a noisy operation that goes on directly behind this property line. So there was a wall installed to help block the noise.
It's a noisy operation, especially early in the morning.
Yeah, no, it truly is. But there's no complaints. They're happy and cooperative neighbors. So they installed a brick wall, but while they were installing the wall, they decided to put a little water feature in it. If you've been to the property, it couldn't be any smaller. It's just a little tiny like water fountain in the wall, and that needs a variance. Another one, which on its surface, when I first saw the survey, I see that slate patio next to the garage. To me, that looked like it could be a bigger deal. But when you go to the property, what that literally is a corner of the property where there's no light at all. And it's an area where they put pots for like, and there's a potting shed. And so those are just bluestone slates sitting on the ground to keep the area from being weedy and muddy. So they would like to just keep those slates and not in concrete. Nobody can sit there. It's an area that you would never use, but it does help to keep stuff out of sight. And it is an area where they keep pots and it's a potting shed. So rather than have that be, it's just a way to keep the area cleaner. The third issue, which at first we didn't even think it needed a variance, but then we determined it did, is the putting green. It's literally at grade. It is fake grass, but it does qualify as a playing court under the village code. There's not really the same associated noise with it that you would assume with a tennis court. And as a matter of fact, the Maidstone tennis courts are literally right on the other side of that property line. We would request a variance to keep the putting green. It was installed obviously without a permit. Just
real grass.
it was human error. They thought that because it was they didn't consider it a playing court when they put it in. They just did it, didn't realize it needed a building permit. Same with the slate stone, and actually the same. All three of them were done obviously without a permit, but just without realizing that these things would require building permits. And that's the essence of the application.
Thank you. Tom, do you have any comments on this? Because we talked about it.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Although encroachments are generally civil in nature, there appears to be encroachments here on the neighboring property, and I just wanted to be assured that there is indeed a pool barrier fence on this property. It doesn't appear that there is. There's also a arbor and a gate and some slate, and I'm not sure that there's a portion of a shed, but again, I'm addressing the encroachment just as an issue of safety for as far as a pool barrier being on this property.
Just like Jonathan, the arbor and the gate and the fence, the 8-foot fence. The deer fence is on the Historical Society.
Yeah, if you, I'm sure you've been to the property. There's this enormous privet hedge there. Although I don't know if that's shown in the survey or where that fence is, but we can't request a variance for off our property, and this is all intended to try to get a CO for the property. So it would have to come into compliance. If we're not asking for it, we're not coming back. So we have to move it back on the property if needed for a CO. To the extent that I know someone just mentioned the shed. I think that's the shed on the McGivern. Look at that property line. It's unlike any property line you normally see. I think there's probably a long history between these properties for why that line looks like that. But the shed itself is not our shed. That's on the McGivern property. Definitely a very messy property line.
So as a question, go ahead, Jimmy.
Correct me if I'm wrong. We cannot give variances on items that are not on their property.
That's not on the property.
And for Tom Moore, you cannot give a C of O or a pool fence that is not used on another piece of property for their property, correct?
That's correct. I mean, there are some instances where fences can be shared. The state.
Typically, they're on the property line, though.
Right, they're usually on the, bulletin was put out by the Department of State, whereas they in some instances, but this is clearly wouldn't be an
This is 12 to
instance.
15 feet
Yeah,
over.
this wouldn't be.
That's not the intent. We would comply.
You would have to do that
We'll
before
have to
you.
put our
before
own
you
fence
got
on
the
our own
CLO.
property.
And it can't be deer fence either around for, it has to.
No, not a pool fence.
Right,
Yeah,
there would
yeah.
need to be a
State compliant.
compliant fence, and I'm not asserting that there's not the proper pool barrier here, but I just
I
want.
don't know. I don't
bring
know
that-
either. Yeah,
bring that
but there
up.
will be. If these variances are granted, or either way, I suppose, we are trying to get a CO.
And that's very before.
But part of this variance is for the 8-foot deer fence.
Right, but it's not being used as a pool.
Okay.
So I think that may have been noticed, right, Billy? Like, I don't think we originally requested that. I think it was noticed because after we applied, it came up as an issue. So to the extent that you can't grant it, we're not asking for it. I think it was just noticed out of precaution because, hey, look, here's something else that you didn't ask for. But we're not asking for any relief, not on our property.
When was this done? This for?
Which one? Like the putting green or the?
No, the putting green, I gather recently, the other slate in the.
So they've owned the property for 20 years. I don't know for sure on the slate patio, but again, it's not even please look at the property if.
No,
yeah,
I've
it's-
been, my question on that is only, and these go, could also be solved with a gravel, the slate can be picked up and it could be kind of pea gravel, but that it can't be grass and shouldn't be mud is clear.
Yeah.
What the appropriate thing to do to deal with that condition, given that it's within the setback, is a question. And another question, the issue of the putting green and the play court, which is a putting green, which is very different from a basketball court. but I guess, and this is more of a question, an existential question I put forward to our council, which is, the camel's nose here. We don't want people accidentally putting play courts that they didn't realize required permits. Then we find ourselves, having to retroactively deal with these things. And well, the neighbors didn't object, and we need to have.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think, well, Philip, you have any?
Yeah, so if we were to approve this, could we approve the putting green that it cannot be, as a play court, that it cannot be
That
paved,
it has to
transformed?
stay in its existing condition is noted on the plan. Right, absolutely.
Because as somebody said, it's a lot different between a handball court and a putting green.
Or pickleball.
Pickleball, all sorts of things. So it's not that this particular use seems to be assuming, by the way, the neighbor has no objection, is on the neighbor adjoining.
The neighbor chips onto the.
Right, well, there's a big hedge. It actually looks like it's right on the property line, but even though, because the hedge is there, but it would be good to have some input from the adjoining property owner to the south that doesn't, indicating a lack of objection to the play court.
Well, they've been
They've been noticed, so they don't have.
I understand, but I think some affirmative outreach could be, as it has
Tennis
been.
courts, right?
What?
It's the tennis.
I
courts.
didn't, no, that's to the west. I'm talking to the south of the property line.
So I can tell you that normally we do reach out to the neighbors. We didn't on this one only because they also back up to the Maidstone mechanicals. Yeah, and
I
tennis courts.
understand. I just think it would be.
And they're actually
apropos of items that were.
I was just going to finish. I was saying so the only reason I didn't was because it's so incredibly innocuous compared to the tennis courts are literally right behind their house. So I just didn't do it this particular time because I just couldn't imagine a scenario where they would mind, but they were noticed, right? So.
Any other questions? A motion to.
I'll make a motion to close the hearing.
Second.
Can we just leave it open to
For written submission.
for written
Okay,
submissions for the purpose?
Can
of
we leave it open?
Just affirmation that the neighbors don't object to it.
Sure. I just 100%. I just want to make sure we understood that. So it's just for adjacent neighbors,
Yes,
correctly
please.
notice neighbors to submit.
That's all.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
And if I can, I actually will reach out and see if I can get anything from them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Phil. So moving along to 26 West End Road LLC, 26 West End Road.
Application of 26 West End Road LLC, subject tax map number 301-1537.1 for area variances, chapter 278 zoning and a wetlands permit from chapter 163 to construct two accessory structures, sculptures. The wetlands permit in accordance with section 160.3 of 44 feet is requested from section 78A8 to construct accessory structure / 6 feet from wetlands where the 150-foot setback is required. Variance is requested from section 278.3A5B to construct an accessory structure art sculpture 10 feet from side yard lot line where the required side yard setback is 20 feet. The subject property is 71,347 square feet in area. 26 Western Road and is in Residence District R160. This property is located in FEMA flood zone AE 11 and zone X. And has frontage on Georgia Pond. This project is classified as a tax action. In accordance with
Thank you, Pam. And just for the record, we did get a letter from Mr. Ackerman regarding 30 Summer House 30 LLC, and they have no objections to the sculpture. Go ahead and press.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Christopher Kelly, Toomey Latham Shea, Kelly, Dubin, and Cordero for the applicant, 26 West End Road LLC. This property is 71,000 square feet plus on West End Road in the R160 zone and fronts on Georgia Pond. The proposal is to locate two outdoor sculptures on the property which require some relief. One of the sculptures is proposed to be within the 150-foot setback from Georgia Pond, and that is located or proposed to be located 106 feet. That is a sculpture by the artist Thad Mosley.
The other sculpture is by Camille Enrot and is to be located 10 feet west of the eastern property line where 20 feet is required. I've submitted a memorandum of law to the board, so I won't belabor the hearing with explanations of how we meet all the criteria. I believe we do for a variety of reasons, but I'll just highlight a couple of things. John mentioned we have a letter of support from one of the neighbors. The neighbor on the other side has submitted a letter of support as well, and that's attached to the memorandum. So neighbors on both sides have signed off on this. There'll be no visual impact at all from this because it's not, can't be seen from the road, either sculpture. And we've submitted renderings that show the landscaping and how these sculptures will be screened from neighboring properties, which I believe, which is what caused the neighbors to sign off on it because they won't see these. But there is a huge hedge on the eastern side, and there's also a mature linden tree. There's also a precedent that this board has for granting these types of variances. In fact, one of the neighbors that consented here was granted a variance for a sculpture to be located within the wetland setback. So we think this board has addressed that before and understands what's going on here. So with that, I would ask if the board has any questions.
Vice Chair before Mira.
All I would say is that I really don't have a problem with this. The only thing that I would ask that if this is approved, that please note that this is solely for these two pieces of art. And if anything else is going to be replaced or changed, that the applicant would have to come back to us.
Certainly.
But
Question in terms of the sculpture proposed for the in the wetlands protected area. What's the height, and is that it's going to be visual? It's going to be visible from the pond?
Yes, it would be visual. It would be visible from the pond. It's 105 inches tall. So a little over 8 feet.
And 8 feet by what? I mean, how
The other
big?
dimensions.
Do you have
The other dimensions are
particular sculpture?
42 inches by 34 inches. The base on which this is going to be anchored, located, is 10 square feet.
basically it's 3.5 by 3.
So
Do you have an image of the, and I know what 10 by 10 looks like, but
No, it's not 10 by 10.
No,
It's 3.5.
the base is 10.
the base is 10 feet. The sculpture falls within that base.
Right, so it's a 3.5, it's a 3.5 foot square or
Yes.
circle with a 8 foot, 9 foot sculpture on top of it.
There's pictures of the sculptures in the plans
Is that,
that were submitted with the application.
and that's the sculpture itself. Go ahead.
So they recently built this, home.
Yeah, so it's still under construction.
Yeah. So I don't understand why they can't at least pull it back. You know, obviously they're art lovers. They're getting two beautiful pieces of art. Why they couldn't pull it back, you know, within the 125-foot landscape setback from the
problem is
wetland.
the setback touches the residence. The residence is right at the edge.
Not the 150, the 125. Frankly, if they really love these particular pieces of art, they could have designed their residence to have them and meet that setback. 50, which is the one they should be meeting.
So it's at 106. You're talking about adding 19 feet back. Is that what you're suggesting?
That is what I am suggesting. I have no problem with the one on the side.
Anybody else have a comment on that?
I don't have any issues with both, to be honest with
I
you.
would agree with Phil that it would be desirable if it can be done.
Can I ask then that I be given an opportunity to consult with the client and get back to you on that?
That would be great.
But leaving the record only open conditionally for that
That's fine.
purpose.
That's fine.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Trevor? Pam?
That's not Roberts, it's 12, 7, 14. Zoning, the freshwater wetlands area. The first is chapter 163. Approval of guidelines. Variance is required in section 278, wetlands. In accordance with section 163. Remove phragmites from wetlands and adjacent areas. Property is 46,235 square feet in area and is located at 186 Pond Lane in Lisbon's District. This project requires approval of the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation and the East Hampton Town Trustees. The project is classified as an unlisted action in accordance with city law.
Trevor, Billy, can you speak on this real quick before Trevor goes? You're gonna.
Good afternoon, members of the board. Billy Hajek for the Village of East Hampton. This is a fairly routine Phragmites removal project that's proposed to be conducted using handheld tools and equipment, cutting with shears and other devices, and then removing the Phragmites. This work has been done on the north side of Lily Pond by the same group or homeowners association. I've been on the property multiple times, and it's been fairly effective, and they've done a very good job at controlling the Phragmites. And now it's just as an extension to do the sort of south end. And this was also a requirement when this property was subdivided or created, this reserve area. The planning board had required removal of vegetation to try to restore the view of Lily Pond. And this is fulfilling that requirement from the planning board approval. So I offer no objections. I would just opine that I would recommend the board impose the conditions that are standard with applications like this. And it's, that the permit be valid for a period of 4 years, that they provide us with notification before and after, commencement and after they complete the project, and then submission of their annual reports containing photographs, which has been fairly routine for Phragmites removal projects. And there's really no revegetation or anything involved in it because it's just removing of the Phragmites. So,
thank you.
Yep.
Anything to say?
So Trevor Darrell, Fleming and Darrell PLC for the applicant. Not a whole lot to add to Billy's statement. Nothing to add. I got 3 minutes, and that I would just say that we're looking to keep in conformity with the other permits that were issued for the other lots, as Billy had mentioned. They are being hand cut and dragged away. I forget what the rules are, but we have to remove them a certain distance away to even scoop them up, right, to get them away from the pond. Like Billy said, thus far, if you go by, the native species are starting to come back and
it's nice to see,
regenerating the pond a little bit. So, but this is with conformity. We kind of went sort of backwards because this was the first parcel that was supposed to be cut, but it got sort of stepped over, but we're now looking to get it to the finish line here.
Great. Any objections?
I make a motion that we close this hearing.
Do we have anybody from the public?
Second.
No. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion to close the meeting?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Happy holidays all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vinny.